Welcome to Slow News here with Kevin Clark. I am Kevin Clark. Woo! Could you imagine waking up and Dave Gettleman's in your living room rattling chains and threatening to draft a running back second overall? That'd be tough.
Yeah, I've always specialized in that midnight Hawaii game when the day has gone terribly and you've only got one chance to redeem it. And so, yeah, Hawaii over San Jose State looks like a good bet right now.
All right, Steve Kornacki, NBC News, MSNBC national political correspondent. He's a contributor to Sunday Night Football. One of my favorite people in media. Steve, I had a moment on Sunday night when the Cowboys, the Cardinals, and the Bucs were all tied for the 2 seed. And I'm looking at the standings, I'm looking at the tiebreakers, and at one point I just screamed, I just need Kornacki. Do you like the fact that you're now an expert in explaining two very different things to people all over America?
I mean, I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'm trying my best. It actually kind of flowed more smoothly, I think, than I thought it would. Just that, like, the election is, if Biden wins Michigan, if Trump gets Arizona, what does that do to the road to 270? What are the chances now? How would it change with this state? There actually is, I think, some overlap there, believe it or not. So it was a smoother transition for me than I thought it would be.
All right, so let's start from the top. You're a Pats fan, but I think that people misunderstand. Unless you were born in 1990, it was pretty grim there for a while. And I know you grew up in an era of grim Pats football. And I'm hoping you could just explain to people what being a Pats fan meant at the very beginning for you.
I appreciate you saying that, because most people don't get that. And I'm the most spoiled person in the world when I tell them I'm a Patriots fan and don't you love cheaters and all this stuff. But I think from the time I was in, I'm going to say 5th grade until I was a sophomore in high school, which, you know, when you're that age, that feels like 100 years.
Sure.
I don't think I saw a single Patriots game, a home game on television, because they never sold out. Remember, I don't know, they still have the blackout rule.
They got rid of it about 8 years ago. Yeah.
Unfortunately, they had it back then. And if you wanted a Pats home game, you had to listen to it on WBZ radio, and you could listen to them lose to the Jets 6-3.
You don't have that problem anymore. You do not have to listen. You can watch it on TV, and you don't have to worry about the Jets. That's a two-pronged problem that was solved. There's some excitement now with Mac Jones. I mean, I think last year people were staring at the 2020 Patriots and saying, oh my God, how long is this going to last? The added sting of watching Brady win a Super Bowl with Tampa, in Tampa. Now we got Mac Jones. What do we think, Steve?
Until last week, until the Colts game, I mean, it was, I don't want to sound too much like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here, but it was feeling to me a lot like that 2001 season, when right. Brady kind of took over for Bledsoe and suddenly they started winning games and it didn't quite seem real.
Watching the games in the studio with whoever, whether it's Tony Dungy, Drew Brees, obviously you have contact with the PFF folks, Chris Collinsworth's on site, but obviously it's all very collaborative. How has being kind of connected to that changed your perspective on football and given you a different set of eyes on just how to consume a game you've watched for a long time?
It's sort of like a sports bar where they've got every game right. on. But instead of just having some, drunk 24-year-old screaming about, the Eagles or something, you've got a Hall of Fame coach commenting on it in the room with you. I'm watching two things, I feel, Sunday afternoons. I'm watching the games, on the screen in front of me, and I'm watching the people in the room with me watch the games, because that's just a fascinating experience itself.
You said that you study the old broadcasts of NBC. And I'm curious, as someone who's clearly a broadcast geek, are there broadcasters in your life, sports broadcasters, who say this guy's the greatest of all time or this woman's the greatest of all time? Who's on your kind of short list of greats for sports broadcasting?
I think if you had to do like an all-around, kind of versatility, combination of versatility and skill and just in everything, it's kind of hard to argue with Al Michaels, I think.
Yeah.
Who is more associated with NFL play-by-play in the last generation than Al Michaels? And yet, most famous call of his career is hockey, Miracle on Ice. Probably the second most famous thing he did was Major League Baseball, the earthquake game in '89. I mean, he was a baseball broadcaster on network TV. I think the versatility with Michaels, Michaels, I grew up on Brent Musburger still in his CBS years, so I've always had a real kind of affection for Musburger. And then, there's like sports specific ones too. Horse racing, Dave Johnson. I don't know if you know the name, but you know the call.
Dave
Down
Johnson.
the stretch they come. Kentucky Derby in the 80s and 90s. I think he's the greatest race caller there's been.
If you were to draft, if you're just thinking pie in the sky, take anybody from sports and draft them into politics. Doesn't matter the party, doesn't matter the role, doesn't matter anything. The person you think would be most likely to succeed in politics is who, Steve?
It's an interesting question because if you're talking state politics, you got to think who's, Tom Brady running for office. I'm thinking I'd be tempted to say Brady because I think he's been, he got into a little trouble on the sideline Sunday night, but I think Brady's been pretty good. I mean, he stayed very, very visible, very, very public. And I think he's avoided a lot of the landmines that come with that. He might have a facility for that.
He's done a very good job of saying almost nothing over the past 20 years, which would serve him well.
I mean, you wouldn't, the way our politics are played these days, maybe that skill is passe, but I'm trained to think of that as a good political skill.
I'm curious about your sports betting history. You did the Kentucky Derby and you talked about betting the horses and stuff like that. Are you a bettor? Do you bet on different sports? Do you bet on football? What is your history there?
Yeah, it's legal now, so I guess I could say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire up the apps.
The Derby one is crazy for me because I've been betting the Kentucky Derby as long as, I can remember. And the one year I got to go on national television and make a pick in the Derby is like literally the only year I picked the winning horse. It was my luck because I've had I think I picked a few Derby horses that are probably still running the race right now. It's how bad it usually is for me.
Do you bet on football ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think much more college. I always thought there was a little bit more opportunity there, just a wider range of games. And sometimes you can find, or at least you can fool yourself into thinking you found kind of a diamond in the rough. Yeah, I've always specialized in that midnight Hawaii game when the day has gone terribly and you've only got one chance to redeem it. And so, yeah, Hawaii over San Jose State looks like a good bet right now. As
someone who knows the midnight Hawaii game as well as anybody, it is perfect. You get to do your last bets. You get to just sneak an extra meal in. You can sneak another beer in because, hey, listen, there's football on. You can do whatever you need to do. Hawaii at midnight is the perfect viewing experience. I'm completely with you.
Well, and then you wake up in the morning too. I always fall. I'm asleep by halftime at the absolute latest. You fall asleep with hope, even if they're losing. It's like, well, they're a high scoring team, maybe, and then you wake up and the first thing you check is your phone. And it's, oh no, it's 57-30. They got beat.
Can you give the people your kind of football betting tips, how you play it? Because listen, if you know all the counties, if you know all the probabilities, you're probably good at betting. Break it down for the people.
The biggest key there is find out who I'm on and fade me. I've been searching for the edge. Honestly, I had one a few years ago, and I still do this from time to time. You can go on these sites where you find like where the public money is.
Yeah.
And generally, I like, if I can find a game where 80% or more of the public is on one side, I do like to go the other way because I think sometimes the most obvious thing is the thing that doesn't happen.
That's great. Steve, I can't help but notice you're wearing a fleece right now and not your normal khakis and tie. When people see you on the street, are they like, where are the khakis and tie? It's just like somebody out of costume. I mean, like you got to have the khakis at all times. Do people ever say that to you?
Yeah, no. I mean, when they see me on the street, usually the first thing they say is, are you Chris Hayes? But yeah, no, sadly, I do. I do actually like, if I knew the khaki thing was going to be, I still don't fully understand it. I mean, honestly, it's kind of what I wear. So I usually do have them on, or I often have them on. So people notice them a lot, but I never intended that, to be something.
You didn't intend to be the khaki god?
I mean, I'm not even sure why there is such a thing in our world.
You didn't know there was an opening?
Yeah, no.
When's your birthday, Steve?
August 22nd. I'm right on the line.
Oh, you're a Leo. Okay. A busy day is likely in store for you. I don't know if that's true. I mean, it's the holidays. Maybe. Who knows? It's early. Even if you have the day off from your career, you can expect some important tasks to come calling. This time, the energy is positive, so the surprises should be as well. Still, you'd be wise to prepare for anything.
So a busy day, but I'm on slow news day.
The news is slow. I don't know what to tell you. But be prepared for anything. So, I mean, you're alone in 30 Rock. Could be some twists and turns. Last thing, we do something called Club Kevin. It's you pick anybody in the world to induct into our version of the Hall of Fame. You can induct whoever you want in.
From any realm here you're talking about.
Anything.
Oh, boy. I was just singing Dave Johnson's praises.
Yes.
Let me give you Dave Johnson.
Boom. Congratulations to Dave Johnson. Steve, thank you so much for coming on Slow News Day. This was so much fun.
I appreciate it. Anytime.